Now, in the NFL, we've seen a good deal of extensions being handed out lately. It feels like every year, two or three players become the highest paid of all time at their position. And obviously, some deserve it more than others. You look at an Ezekiel Elliott, who, had his holdout in Cabo. He eventually got paid, and you look at him and you say, oh, well, he's been the driving force of the Cowboys since day one when he stepped on the field. Paying him wasn't anything crazy. But then you looked at guys like Melvin Gordon, who were really just complementary pieces to already stacked offenses. And obviously, in Melvin Gordon's absence, guys like Austin Eckler stepped up and had magnificent seasons as the team's new running back. And at the end of the day, it ended up hurting Melvin Gordon by sitting out because he proved that his value was nowhere near as big as he thought. Without him, Austin Eckler stepped up, and suddenly the Chargers have themselves a new feature back that they probably wouldn't have gotten to scout and give reps to if Gordon hadn't held out. And at the moment, we have Dak Prescott holding out for a contract with Dallas. Last season, guys like Jared Goff and Carson Wentz got paid. Year before that, I'm trying to think, but I know throughout the years we've had Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, Matt Stafford, just player after player getting these massive contracts. And now the rumor is that Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook is set to be the next name on that list, as he plans on holding out from Vikings activities, and he wants not quite record-breaking money, but Ezekiel Elliott money has been thrown out there. And it's guys like Dalvin Cook that are essentially ruining the running back market, because what exactly has Dalvin Cook done to show that he warrants a contract even half as big as Ezekiel Elliott's? When you're a running back, the reason that they very rarely get these big second contracts is because the wear and tear on your body simply adds up over time, and by the time year 6 or 7 rolls around, you're usually not the same player as you were in year 3 or 4. And Dalvin Cook is the furthest thing from an exception to this rule. Cook has been banged up his entire career. During his rookie season in Minnesota, he's played in just 4 games before he got hurt. In the year after that, he played in just 11 games before he got hurt. And then this past season, he started a career-high 14 games, had his first 1,000-yard season, and exploded in the touchdown numbers, going from 2 to 13 in just the season. And I'll admit, Dalvin Cook is a very good player. I don't think he's an elite running back, but I would not hesitate to put him in that second class with guys like Leonard Fournette. Who else would I say? When you get the gist of it, where they're not Ezekiel Elliott, they're not Le'Veon Bell, they weren't Todd Gurley before he obviously declined as rapidly as he did, and he's just not that guy. He is not the most important part of the Vikings offense. If he was, he would actually have to be on the field for more than a season. In 3 seasons played, talking about your rookie year you missed 12 games, your second year you missed 5 games, and then this year you missed 2 games, and you're expecting a team that is already in cap hell like the Vikings are, and you think that they're going to invest heavily into you. That's just... Rick Spielman and his crew obviously have no reason to do this. They've already established that they have one of the worst cap situations in the NFL. They had Stephon Diggs on a big contract. They obviously traded him. Kirk Cousins is now on his second massive contract in terms of guaranteed money. And obviously Anthony Barr signed an extension just a few years back. And where does Dalvin Cook fit into this? More importantly, what has Dalvin Cook proven to show that he should fit into this? Why should the Vikings clear the decks to get Dalvin Cook his money? It's not like Derrick Henry, where, they were a solid back throughout their career, and then they exploded and led their team to a conference championship appearance. That wasn't the case with Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook played 14 games, it was a good year. I mean, 1,100 yards and is not anything crazy. 13 touchdowns, those are very good numbers. But then his team, they lost in the divisional playoff to the Niners, and they lost in pretty horrid fashion. They got blown out by San Francisco. And obviously Dalvin Cook, it wasn't like a Derrick Henry situation where Cook just carried them to the playoffs. He, single-handedly beat New Orleans in the wild card. That's not what happened. Kirk Cousins had a good year. Kirk Cousins played good against the Saints. And it's just, how can you sit here and say that Dalvin Cook, after a year where he finally played a respectable amount of games, he finally had a 1,000-yard season, finally had double-digit touchdowns, and finally contributed to a playoff win. And that's all we needed to see for us to say, okay, either highest paid in the league in terms of salary at his position, or one of the top 5. He simply doesn't deserve that because Dalvin Cook is not even a top 5 running back. And we're supposed to pay him like that after one good season and one playoff win. And the reason that I side with the Vikings so much is because, they're a good team, but they've just invested too much cap in average to subpar players, and Cook would be no exception to this. And Minnesota, Vikings fans everywhere, things are just going to keep getting worse for you. If you give Dalvin Cook a contract like this, it will be a mistake that will come back to haunt you for years. It might not set in immediately, but paying Dalvin Cook a contract like that would be one of the worst decisions in franchise history, as they would now invest in not one but 2 average players who are now overpaid. And it would take an already bad salary cap situation and make it 10 times worse in a rising NFC North, led by the Lions, who it looks like for the first time in years are finally building a defense. The Bears, who brought in Nick Foles to compete for their starting job. It would finally give them a solid quarterback to pair with their magnificent defense. And obviously the Packers went 13-3 last year. They have Aaron Rodgers, and now they have their quarterback of the future, Jordan Love, sitting on the bench. It's not a good time to get yourself into a bad salary cap situation, and it's certainly not a good time to take a bad situation and make it 10 times worse.